I wanted to hold on to this story for a bit, but ever since I brought it up in the LAN episode, I can't stop thinking about it. My dad, Pokemon, and me. Pokemon Fever was a hell of a time. I don't think we've had any other franchise reach that level of intensity in my lifetime, or, to be honest, anyone's lifetime. Everywhere you looked, it was shirts, toys, games, every piece of merch you can imagine. And then, the cards. Playing on our addictive personalities, the craze to quote-unquote catch 'em all, took us over like a beast infested with rabies. We had to be the best, and we had to have them all. Wizards of the Coast had acquired the rights and released the Pokemon trading card game in '98. It was like a cardboard plague that just kept growing and growing. It was the type of thing where people had clout based on how many cards they had and which cards they had. That's still kinda true today considering the original sets fetch a pretty penny. But regardless of their clout and future financial potential, they played a huge part in my childhood. It all began with me asking my parents if we could get a couple of packs of cards. My dad was always into the idea of flipping things, like sports cards and whatever the hell he could, and so he was all for it. We picked up a binder and a couple of packs, and I was hooked. After a period of collecting cards, I expressed to my dad that I wanted to learn how to play the game. My mom and dad picked up the 2-player starter deck, and I remember there being some sort of instructional VHS. My mom didn't care too much for the game, but my dad seemed to enjoy it. Collecting began to escalate. We'd go to the store and it was impossible to leave without a pack or two. Eventually my dad was buying packs on the side for his own collection. The apartment we lived in was relatively close to a 7-Eleven, so my dad and I would walk there from time to time. Usually on these trips we would end up getting some cards. I was beginning to become increasingly discouraged with buying packs because I had just wanted a Charizard. It was like the one card I wanted and I could never get. Now for those of y'all that don't know, Charizard was like the king of kings, the coolest in the game, the raddest in the cartoon. He was one tough motherfucker, and on top of all of this, he was one of the rarest, or at least felt like, rarest cards you could get. But on one faithful 7-Eleven trip, I asked my dad if I could get some cards. He told me I could only get one, and I picked through the packs like an elderly lady looking for the longest dated gallon of milk and eventually settled on a pack. We walked out of the store and I cracked it open and I slowly rifled through it, and there he was. That magnificent bastard. The holographic Charizard I had been dreaming of. I had this huge smile on my face and gave my dad a hug. Running home felt like I was Charlie, and this was my golden ticket, and soon I'd have my chocolate factory. Flash forward a few months. My parents' marriage had been on the rocks since I was born, and they were back to being separated. I still had my invested in passion in collecting and playing Pokemon, but it was mainly only when I could visit my dad. I'd see him every Wednesday and every other weekend. Wednesdays, if I was lucky, after school he'd take me to card shops and we'd trade or buy cards we needed for our collection or decks. On the weekends, we started grinding out the Pokemon TCG League at Toys R Us. Every Saturday we'd get to Toys R Us at like 9 in the morning and play against folks of all ages. There was a whole thing where you grinded out matches for points and then you could collect the actual Pokemon badges. My dad and I had grinded it out to the point of having multiple sets of extra badges. I gamed, he gamed, we dunked, and we were that young father-jot duo. Now, we had tried looking for other places to play, but Toys R Us was like the main deal until Wizards opened in the mall. I remember us going to this other toy shop called Zany Brainy, and they kicked us out because they wouldn't let my dad play. He was my parental guardian, and they wouldn't let him play. Go figure. That's alright though, because Zany Brainy sucked ass and they made you play on the floor. Between going to card shows and competing at stores, we made a wide variety of friends. One of the more memorable people was this high school kid named Dave we met at Toys R Us, and he would usually pal with us to events, and it just became a regular thing because he needed a ride. When Wizards of the Coast finally opened that shop in our mall, we began to go there a lot more than Toys R Us. Toys R Us had gotten old because it was typically the same folks, and Wizards had better incentives to play there. Better prizes, nicer tables, that sweet, sweet LAN center I talked about in episode 2, and a better stock of TCG stuff. Playing at Wizards, we'd meet more father-son duos and a lot more mature brand of players. This is probably because most of them also played Magic the Gathering and picked up Pokemon as a second hobby. I'm having trouble remembering what cards were specifically in decks I played, but I remember my dad having this legendary electric deck with Zapdos and Raichu. He had these beautiful black gloss sleeves for the cards, and I think I only remember the deck so vividly because he'd kick everyone's ass with it. He was taking a lot of wins when we'd go to events, and he was getting better and better and was highly respected amongst the local community. He had all kinds of connects for cards in English or Japanese and could often get you the trades you needed for deck building. My dad was the fucking man. We kept this going for a good amount of time, and it was probably the closest thing I ever really had to a bonding experience. Like I said before, my folks' marriage was kind of beyond fucked. Both of my parents had moved on to new partners and became increasingly unbearable to deal with. I didn't know what depression and anxiety were back then, but I'm 90% sure this was the beginning of it. Now, eventually my dad would come to me and tell me he was leaving the state. Him and my soon-to-be stepmom wanted to start a new life elsewhere, and it's not like I can blame them. For the last 6 months before my father left, we still went to events and kept playing. I became less and less interested in the TCG and wanted more to do with the PC gaming taking place at Wizards. I don't know if this is because I was hurt or if I genuinely lost interest. A lot of this time is kind of a blur, but maybe that's for the better. Now you're probably gonna ask, well, Jotty, you at least have the cards, right? Like, you could at least make some money off the collection you guys had? And the answer is, unfortunately, no. Between multiple moves and our collections being split or scattered, we really don't have anything left. I'm not sure what our collection would have been valued at, but I don't think it would be anything close to the value of my memories of us on our quest to become Pokemon Masters. So while this doesn't have the happy ending that most would want or expect, I felt it was an important story to tell. I hadn't really thought about the details in quite some time, so I think it was healthy for me to talk about it. If we were only shaped by good events, we wouldn't become the people we are today. Ultimately, we live and learn. And I don't think I would change a thing. Well, maybe the only thing I'd change is that we had a few of those cards left around so we could make some bread. But in all seriousness, let me hear about your Pokemon Fever experiences down below or some other hobby that you might have shared with your parents. I know a lot of people are going to ask me what my favorite Pokemon was, and my answers would probably be like Lugia, Steelix, Murkrow, and I had a weird obsession with Skarmory, even though it's kind of a bad Pokemon. But anyway, remember to like and subscribe for more j0tsh0ts, and as always, no brain, just aim.